Hi, this is Dwayne Palka of Pal Katoonz, and this is another PalkArt demonstration. So I'd like to show you how to make a quilt or how to analyze a quilt and make a quilt structure that you can use in creating pictures. So this is I'll show you this. This is the original quilt, and this was from an Underground Railroad days. Quilt, and it's a matter of analyzing this. We can see the repeated patterns within it, and so it's a matter of taking the basic pattern of this and putting that into a grid. So this is the finished pattern that we'd like to create. So I'm going to turn off Show Picked here, and I'll put on Show Grid, and this is the pattern that I analyzed. That was the basic pattern of the quilt that can be repeated in many different ways. And so, what I like to show I'll show you some tools used to repeat this particular pattern to make the quilt. So let me zoom in a little bit here. Oops. Yeah, I guess that's good enough. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make a shape. So I'm going to click on Start Drawing Shape, and I'm just going to draw anything, really. Pen shape. Now, the shape is coming up as a selection. It doesn't have to be a selection. Here it's not a selection, but I'm going to be using it as a selection. So I'm going to click on the Rect button, make this into a rect. And holding down the Shift Option key, I can grab any corner of this thing and just resize it to where I want it to be. Okay, so within this particular pattern, which is a reflexive pattern, this reflects in this way, I want to take this and put it down here, and then I want to take this and put it down there. So in order to do it, I have to really enclose the grid that's with this selection. So coming over to this other menu here, I'm clicking on Move Grid. And when I click on Move Grid, two buttons pop up. And one button says Get Grid Section, and the other is Put Grid Section. So this is the grid section I want to get right now. So I'm going to click on Get Grid Sect. And now, holding down the Option key so I can retain the size of this grid, I'm just moving it, or this selection, I'm moving it down here so that it includes the area that I want to move it to. Let me just move out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's try that. So let's say, I can always undo this, by the way. That thing seemed to work pretty well. Now what I like to do is select it again with the Option key and move it upward. I can also do this with Move, and that would allow me more control over doing it. In other words, I can freeze the X position and just change the Y by changing some numbers. So this is the one I want to grab now. I want to say Get Grid Sect. Hold down the Option key again and move it down to here. And say Put Grid Sect. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the visibility of that selection, and that's pretty much what we want. Actually, the selection tool is necessary. So I'm just going to turn it back on again, because what I'd like to do is just resize this. So again, Shift Option key. And so include that whole pattern here, include the whole pattern. I'm going to do a full view on this. And now I'm going to come over and click on the button Grid All. So that does a pretty good job. Now I'm going to turn off the visibility of that selection tool. So here's our grid, basically. Now, it'd be really nice if I could click on Fill All and have it just fill in this grid pattern for me. Unfortunately, Fill All still needs a little bit more work on some type of fill. Some fills works great. It does a fantastic job with quads, but it doesn't do to it in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the fill cell, and I'm going to start clicking on every other one that I want to show here. So I'm going to click on this guy up here, and I'll click on this one. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving holes in here. So I'm clicking on this one and this one. This works pretty well, actually. It's not too slow. Besides, it allows you to select every other one, which is what you want to do at this point. Go up here. Okay, now I can continue with this, but I already have it where I did it before, so I saved it off. So I'm going to reset this field, and I'm going to input an SVG file that I saved off. And this is the SVG file. So that was the work I did before. It's a nice thing about SVG files that we can do that and call them in like that. Now you notice I did every other one so that I have something similar to that grid pattern that we saw originally, where there are spaces in between things. And the spaces in between things mean that I can put a pattern in here. If you notice that the original grid, I'm going to turn off Show Shapes here, and also I don't need to show the grid anymore. And I'm going to show pictures. And the picture that was is so similar in terms of the pictures and the grid. So basically, I'm just going to, because of the simple patterns that are within here, I'm just going to use this as a temporary background picture. But I should have a really cool pattern that I want to use for that purpose. So here I'm going to show shapes. I'm going to show the shapes again, and you can see how the shapes show in the picture. So this is pretty good for this purpose. I also went around and I filled in all the other ones that were not filled in to do that. So let me do a reset fill, and I'm going to do an input SVG file again, and this is the result of that. And this is the basic pattern that we were aiming for in the process. Now, another way of using that pattern, of this particular pattern, and I'm going to use show the About PalkArt so that I can show the splash screen here. And on the splash screen, you'll notice that I used that particular grid pattern for the background of the picture. And in doing so, I used the colorized options and to capture a picture that was behind that. So I colorized the various shapes, and I used shuffle as a random to create random colors on the background picture, and then I captured a background picture, and it was nice to put it behind this heart. Okay, thank you very much.